Good morning. For those of you who haven't worked it out, I'm Charles. I'm going to present on the focus topic of this show. Lots of people here are used to me and my moderation at this show, and I'm reasonably relaxed and liberal. The focus topic is the main theme of the show, so I have to behave myself. I've had to write it out in detail because the whole question of certificates, which ones matter, dare I say, the word, it is highly emotional. People have lots of views about different ones. What I'd really like to do is stand up here and give you guidance for which one you need to choose. I'm going to attempt to do that, but I'm going to explain it first. So what I'm doing is I've just started the conversation, trying to attract a few people in, and we have Stuart who's going to the sound booth over there to get microphoned up, because straight after I've finished, there's going to be a panel. My presentation is actually quite short. You can almost ignore it. But I have a panel of three very wise people. So it's going to be Julie Gretton, if you know Julie, Stuart Shepherd, and a guy I've not yet seen this morning, Hannah. We need to find Rene Bethman. We need to find him. He's on stage in 10 minutes' time. Can you go and speak to the organizers? They might have to put out a wider announcement for him. So I'm going to kick off in about 1 minute to make it easy, but Charles is going to have to read from a script because it's really serious. I'll try and be a bit of fun and put in some attitude, but because it's the main theme of the show, I think I should do it properly. Okay. No problem. Okay. This presentation is recorded, so if any of you get insomnia, in about 2 weeks' time, it will be streamed off the website. You can play it back, and I guarantee within 3 minutes of pressing play, you will be fast asleep. But I'm going to try and make it a bit more entertaining. Certifications, which ones matter? The focus topic is one of those widely misinterpreted by the thought of the incoming EU Green Deal legislation, which has already passed, but it is still being implemented over the next 26 months or so. And the individual countries with their implementation are being set a minimum standard. There are countries that will actually take the standard higher. Take a subtle hint, France could well be harder to get into. The start point is that certifications have only needed to exist because certain parts of the fashion and textile industry have taken shortcuts around acceptable standards. Acceptable is my choice of word for what I consider to be a decent or respectable behavior. If we all acted honorably and paid the living wage or used the best chemicals, acted in a caring way for the planet and the people on it, there would be no need for standards like what the certificates endorse. I define a certificate as an official classification whereby a standard is a level of quality. Generally, it's the minimum level of quality. When I speak to those within companies who appropriate the environmental social governance, the most popular question that is asked of me is, which one should I choose? There are so many. The follow-up question is also based around why they cost so much. So if I answer the second question first, if you want a good standard, you've got to have a third-party auditing, someone independent, and the reach should be worldwide. If these don't bother you, then there are plenty of other certifications out there. But in my view, Why bother? You're pouring good money after bad. If you want quality, you have to pay for it. There are too many certificates that just add to the fog, in my humble opinion. Hence, I will now try and answer the former point, but there is a far more detailed layout of this information in the Trend Forum. We're in Hall C4. The Trend Forum is in the middle of Hall C5. It's where they have gathered all the best fabric samples in the middle of the hall. There is a wall in the middle of the Trend Forum. It's on the far side of the wall. When you go and look at it, you will suddenly realize how complicated the subject is. Added to this, immediately after I finish here, so about 5 minutes' time, there is the focus topic panel of 3 industry stalwarts discussing this very subject. I can, and actually I will, vouch for all 3 of them being a mine of information. But when they speak, you should listen. I do, and I learn. I must also give a shout out to Anna Schuster, who did so much of the work for the display I've just described in the Trend Forum. It's also online, but it's not in the app. So the slides are just to change some graphics. There's not a lot going on in the slides. I've put up a few random slides. This was the best illustration I could find of the amount of certificates. The one I actually found and wanted to feature, all of these are recorded. My talk is recorded and the slides will be uploaded so you can get a much better clarity on it. What you will find, the slide I wanted to use had 3 times the number of certifications on, but the writing was so small you didn't stand a chance of reading it. There is a jungle of standards. But anyway, to the panel that comes after me, I've got Julie Gretton. She's one of those fabric specialists who's now with W.L. Gore, sorting out their supply chain going up from the final material. She'll correct me if I'm wrong. Rene Bethman, who he's here, good, is no stranger to this stage. He very much led the whole topic of biopolymers a couple of years ago. He is involved in the future fabric subject and also governmental lobbying. But the brand he works for, Valde, created the Green Shape certification. The third member is Stuart Shepherd. He has even broader experience both in Europe and the US. He leads at S2 Consulting, having been in roles ranging from Gore-Tex's sustainability team to helping brands come into using the HIG toolkit. If you've ever been through a HIG training session, you'll recognize his voice. The HIG tools are the standardized measurement framework for this industry, whereas there has been some debate over the applicables of the MSI, which was just an overreach in my opinion. There are 4 other tools that have become firmly established as industry metrics. Whereas I will talk about certification schemes that have been around a decent amount of time, HIG has had the largest take-up of any mark, even though it has just been around a decade and a half. It has approximately 50% of the US market. We consider a certification worth paying attention to if you get 10% of the market. They are vast, they are very powerful, they are worldwide. Anyway, the 3 of them will introduce themselves. But I talk of there only being 5 certifications that I pay attention to. Primarily, it's Blue Sign. Blue Sign started 25 years ago and has influenced the market so that each and every year since then, the individual footprint of a garment has reduced. Our hassle is we're consuming more garments. So the average has gone down, but the overall impact has gone up. That's the first one. Fairwear. Fairwear, who are running actually workshops today in the center of this hall. Fairwear are the labor standard. It is considered that we might be 80% of the way to having low impact garments through better chemical choices and procedures. There could be 14 areas applicable to corporate social responsibility. The focus of the climate crisis is much needed, as well as the general pollution threat. But we need to look at other factors. Those and the conditions that work in the supply chain are just as important. And right now, there are lots of easy wins companies could move to, which aren't going to cause too much disruption. The third certification I talk about is the HIG toolkit. I've already mentioned them. When you have such a take-up, it is the dominant one within the industry. The fourth is the incoming EU Green Deal. You will have heard it referred to, possibly the eco-design for sustainable product regulation, digital product passports, DPPs. We're talking about product environmental footprints. They all fit within it. It is still being formulated, but the idea is to have a system that is more advanced than the HIG index and the various HIG tools. It's going to be massive, because if you do not comply with the EU Green Deal, the object of the EU Green Deal is that this continent is net zero by 2030. So they've highlighted 3 areas that they call single-use applications: batteries, consumer electronics, and fast fashion. The problem is they're not allowed to single out fast fashion. They're not allowed to victimize it. So they've had to include the whole of textiles. There's a really good presentation actually on the EU Green Deal tomorrow morning by Stefan. I think he's on stage about 11:15. The fifth one I talk about is the most surprising. I talk B Corps. B Corp has nothing to do with the textile setup whatsoever. It's a company one, but every company that I visit that has passed B Corp standards, it's the first thing the employees tell me. It's what they're most proud about within their company. They're not proud of the other certifications whatsoever. B Corp is the one, and we must remember we need to look after our team members at exactly the same time. Now, when I chat these 5 overs with my peers, they say I am wrong. There are 2 others that should be on the list, and I grumbly accept the fact, although I think the panel might well highlight more than 2. The Textile Exchange range of standards, ranging from GOTS, Global Organic Trading Standard, to the Responsible Wool Standard via the Global Recycled Standard. There are a lot of them. The good news is that the Textile Exchange accepted that it is hard to communicate between so many standards. So last autumn, they announced the introduction of Materials Matter. Materials Matter. Charles keeps on putting up slides when there's depressing news, just to try and make you smile. Materials Matter is going to try and combine the most popular standards that they certificate together, so we can compare apples with pears, or I should more appropriately say cotton with wool and down at the same time. The final one is Okotex. Okotex was the first ever standard that came to light. It started the change. It is the oldest one, it's the longest existing. When Okotex was first produced, it was known as the Okotex 100. The Okotex 100 standard still exists, but rather than it being 100 different things it was tested for, it's now progressed to 1,041. Standards are evolving the whole time. They even have a higher level standard called Okotex Step, worth paying attention to. I could say you pay your money and you take your choice, but what I do know that it is if everyone used the same metrics, then it would make the consumer's life so much easier. However, we are in the industry that uses a variety of different permeability measurements, so it is hard to say which waterproof is best. We are not leading the way in the simplification. That's the keynote.